Welcome everyone to the Legal Navigator webinar. I'm your host, Rebecca from Law Training Centre. Today we'll be discussing the topic of QWE, where to get it and how to review it and confirm it in collaboration with our Access Law Clinic. So today we are actually joined by four wonderful guest speakers. So we have Dino Dullabh, who is the co-founder of Access Law Clinic and for Law Training Centre as well. He is the voice of choice for those to help guide and help them choose the right pathway to qualifying through all the major routes of law. We then have Denisa Budikova. She is an honours and master's degree graduate in international business law. She's currently studying SQE at Law Training Centre and works in our Access Law Clinic as a law clinic associate. We then have Shahedur Rohman. He's a seasoned associate solicitor with a broad experience in practice areas for various areas of litigation. He is also an SQE tutor for the Law Training Centre and a specialist QWE Review and Confirm Solicitor at the Access Law Clinic. And then we have Kieran Spencer. He's an international graduate with a bachelor's degree in international business and a master's in law and public policy. He's a junior lawyer with experience in trademark and patent law in various jurisdictions, and is also an aspiring solicitor. He's recently had part of his QWE signed off at the Access Law Clinic. Thank you all for joining us today. How are all of you?
Thank you, Rebecca. Very good, thanks.
Wonderful. So before we get started, I just want to give those who are joining us here for the first time just a brief background on Law Training Centre. So Law Training Centre was founded with a passion to help individuals find cost-effective pathways to qualify in law. Our expertise lies in delivering accredited online courses that are accessible worldwide. We are actually one of the first global providers to receive accreditation from the main awarding bodies for legal qualifications. We've also partnered with employers and worked with over 700 law firms to help develop and qualify their teams in a way that meets the needs of both the firm and the individual. So all our courses are all delivered by expert tutors with both legal and academic experience and are designed to break down the barriers into the legal profession. So whether you are juggling work or parenthood, or you're a fresh graduate, an experienced practitioner, or even someone who's considering a career change, we make it possible for learners from any background to qualify through flexible alternative legal pathways that best suit the individual goals. So essentially, we deliver accredited professional legal qualifications for aspiring solicitors, licensed conveyancers, probate practitioners, charter legal executive, notaries, and licensed paralegals. So as mentioned, today's webinar will be in collaboration with our Access Law Clinic. So Law Training Centre is in partnership with the Access Law Clinic, which is an online clinic that provides access to pro bono support for those who cannot afford traditional legal fees. We also offer through the clinic valuable qualifying work experience for aspiring legal professionals. So the clinic works with experienced solicitors to review and confirm qualifying experience for the SQE candidates, which of course will provide you with further information in today's session. I will now just pass you over to Dino, who will start off by just giving us just some more information about qualifying experience for the SQE.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rebecca. And welcome everybody today. So I'll start with the three questions that you gave me, Rebecca, to narrow it down, because there is so much that we do. So I know you gave a strict time limit, so I'm going to stick to it. And
yes,
really, the first question is, which experience counts for QWE? And this is probably the question I get asked the most on LinkedIn and whenever I go anywhere, actually. And I've reverted back to first principles really and looked at what the SRA definition is, because there's a lot of talk about what's going on, and that's really clear, but sometimes we just need to go back to what they say. And the SRA referred to the Legal Services Act, the definition in there, section 12, and the first part of that talks about reserved legal activities, and most people stop there and think, oh gosh, my work experience won't count because I don't do reserved activities, because reserved activities are only conducted by solicitors, licensed conveyancers, charter legal executives, and notaries, all with the appropriate practice rights. However, you move on, and it then says the provision of legal advice or assistance in connection with the application of the law or with any form of resolution of legal disputes. So that part's really important. The assistance in connection with the application of law. And we'll revisit this when we come back into it, when we do a deep dive. And secondly, the provision of representation in connection with any matter concerning the application of the law or any form of resolution of disputes that are legal. And the only caveat there is it doesn't cover mediation, but otherwise the provision of representation. And you might be wondering, well, who does provide representation if they are not a qualified solicitor or advocate under another regulator? Well, in fact, government representatives have special dispensation to conduct advocacy in court. So there's an example where this applies. Now, it all sounds very technical when I put it that way, but in practice, it's really much broader than one may think, and it's much more varied than it was under the old training contract. And I think that's what trips most people up when they're considering QWE. They're thinking of it in terms of the old training contract route, and really, you need to almost forget about everything you know about the old training contract route and then really look at the guidelines again. So, that's all fine. So now we have an understanding of, I hope we have an understanding of what work experience counts. And of course, in the questions afterwards, please, we can, please, anybody who does have them, bring them up. But now, where can it actually be obtained? So this is this is really a step change in experience and going against the, comparing against the old training contract route. Before, your training contract had to be in a regulated environment by the SRA, which was most typically a law firm. It could have been in-house, but that had to be regulated by the SRA. And most in-house legal departments did not need to go through the expense and regulatory hassle of becoming an SRA regulated environment within a company. So say, for example, a classic example of one we work with is UK Power Networks. They have in-house legal teams. They don't have to be regulated. Now, QWE can be obtained in charitable sector, in-house legal that's not regulated by the SRA, law centers. Crucially, the SRA actually mentioned the word here, paralegal work. That's not me paraphrasing, that's exactly what they say. So finally, at last, paralegals are getting recognition for the work that they do, because if we go back to what I just said earlier, assistance in connection with the application of law, that's effectively what a paralegal. And work placements during university study or other study also count. And of course, work in a law clinic like ours also counts. So it's really broad where you can get it. And that part's really exciting for us because it no longer means you have to physically be at a certain place at a certain time to gain your QWE, hence us creating it fully online. Now, the other bit is where we need to go a little bit broader about where it can be obtained, because where it does not also mean in England and Wales. You can have overseas work experience. And by that, I don't just mean overseas work experience for a law firm based out in Dubai, for example, which is pretty common now. It actually counts overseas work experience in any jurisdiction. So you're probably wondering, well, hang on a second, what's going on here? People can get work experience from a completely different jurisdiction, a completely different area of law. How does that count? Well, that sort of leads me on to something we're going to cover in a bit more depth later. But the important part is the work experience is no longer the requirement to assess competency. The SRA are assessing your competency via the SQE exams. So that, again, is a very, very big shift from what went before under the training contract route, where the training part of the competency was delegated down to a solicitor who employed a person. The SRA is instead holding back that authority and making their own decision based on a number of factors, including SQE, but also character and suitability checks alongside QWE. So that's really exciting because it really opens up the profession, and it doesn't make it any easier though, because anybody from another jurisdiction will tell you gaining relevant qualifying work experience in other jurisdictions, in fact, sometimes more difficult than it is even in England. So easier isn't the word I'd use, but certainly makes it more accessible and more possible to recognize professionals from different backgrounds coming into the profession and adding and bringing important skills that we need, especially in a complex and more international world that we're in. And then the third point was who must sign off or confirm the QWE. So I think it's quite important for us to note here that the role of the person reviewing and confirming is exactly that. It has to be a solicitor of England and Wales or a compliance officer for legal practice, known as a COLP. Now, all they are doing is reviewing and confirming. Also important to note is that these people do need a regulatory relationship with the SRA, so they have to have been solicitors or COLPs registered with the SRA. However, they do not have to hold a current practicing certificate, so they can be non-practicing as well. So that does increase the availability and options of people who can do this. And you might wonder, well, when does that really apply? In certain circumstances, for example, in-house legal, people may not need to hold the practice certificate. So holding the non-practice certificate, the cost is quite significantly different. So you would have solicitors who are, and you'll see it, they have to mention it, they say that they're non-practicing. This means they can actually still sign, review and confirm. I keep using the word sign off, and really I have to get in the habit of saying review and confirm, because that's what the SRA then says. It says that, look, the solicitor is only reviewing and confirming the length of work experience, and that work experience was in fact providing legal services, and that the candidate had the ability and the opportunity to develop at least 2 of the competencies. So not all of the competencies, but just 2. And it also needs the person needs to check that there were no issues raised that would bring into question the character and suitability of the candidate. And again, the SRA reiterates it and says, confirming QWE does not involve deciding whether an individual is competent or suitable to practice. That decision lays with the SRA. This is simply someone who has a regulatory relationship and responsibility with the SRA, reviewing and confirming. Now, that covers off a broad bunch. It really opens up the number of people who are able to review and confirm. But this is, we know, under the training contract, we had a massive bottleneck, and this is where a lot of people face a lot of restriction and frustration to actually getting qualified. So people would be working for years, sometimes decades, and not being able to get their work experience recognized as a training contract piece. So this really frees up a big bottleneck. So I think the last bit that I'll cover off is introduction to Access Law Clinic and our role in QWE Review and Confirm, and why do we set it up? I like to think it's fairly obvious, but it's sort of worth explaining, and I think a lot of people who are attending today probably will identify with this. But you know, from our own personal experience, so when I say our own, I mean with my co-founder, my wife Eve, who went through the whole traditional route. And this is an experience not just shared by us, but certainly hit home really hard for us when we were young students and aspiring lawyers. And I know many of our learners and many of the people listening today will identify and have come across these obstacles. And really the obstacles are twofold. The first one was actually getting a training contract in the first place. You know, in England and Wales, although there was over 10,000 law firms, at its best, there was maximum 6,000 training contracts granted in a year. On average, it was around 4,500, 5,000 a year. At its peak in the heyday, when Eve did her LPC, there were around 10,000 or 12,000 people studying the LPC per year. So if you sat in your LPC class and you looked at the person to your left, you looked at the person to your right, one of you had a chance of actually qualifying. But you were all paying a massive fee and taking a gamble, right? The other obstacle that we found now, and that's more latterly, is actually getting a solicitor to review and confirm. So the training contract is no longer. If you have an LPC, you need to do SQE2, so there's that hurdle to overcome. But then actually getting a solicitor to review and confirm isn't as straightforward as you'd think, because whilst it's very clear, I think, from the SRA's guidelines, it is new, and solicitors still have to get comfortable with it, and there is a regulatory responsibility. So we recognize that whilst the route is opened up, what the SRA are really saying is, look, people are going to need to step up and provide this service. And that's how we founded the clinic. And we saw early on that people were really struggling. And there was a lot of talk online about what to do if somebody refuses QWE, and the SRA published guidance around that. And it's pretty heavy hitting. They do say that solicitors and COBs have a responsibility to review and confirm within reasonable grounds. They can only withhold on reasonable grounds. And they do make a process available to complain or report a person through the ethics regulation part of the SRA. The thing is, a new entrant to the profession, the last thing they want to do and the last thing they want to start their career by doing is going to the SRA and raising an ethics complaint about a fellow solicitor who they may be working with in the future. It's a vast area of law. There's a lot. There's nearly 200,000 practicing and non-practicing solicitors on the roll and other types of lawyers. But on LinkedIn, I think everybody's probably no more than 3 connections away. It's always been that way. It's quite a small world. So that's not the way new entrants want to come into the world. So we said we'll provide a service where we can get people who, if they genuinely can't get it reviewed and confirmed where they are for whatever the reason is, we can provide a helping hand with that. So we have 3 distinct purposes. The first bit is providing expertly trained solicitors, and you'll hear from one in a little bit. And I don't use the word expert lightly because it's been a serious learning journey and a lot of hours spent learning and going through, and we've had many behind the scenes discussions around the complexities and interpretation of things, but trained in which, and they're actually willing to review and confirm. Now, the beauty I think about that is us having had this experience of going through it, is we now know that we can give all parties involved looking at somebody's QWE that's been reviewed and confirmed assurance that it's been done in the correct manner. Because there has been some concern, well, is this a bit perhaps relaxed? Is a way, well, no, it's not when it's done properly. So we provide assurance there. The second part of what we do is providing quality QWE for candidates. Now, what do we mean by this? This means real legal work for real people with real cases and real lawyers from real law firms. There's no simulations of work. Those are nice things to use, but that's not counted as QWE. So this is real work experience, and you'll hear from Denisa later, who's undertaken some real life cases and worked with some of the real life solicitors that we have who kindly donate their time to the clinic to enable it. And then thirdly, the overarching big part of this is providing that much needed pro bono legal advice for people who can't afford it. And alongside that comes something that's really special. Because we do this fully online and we've got vetted associates who are really serious about turning up and doing the work, it means those solicitors who are donating their precious time, which is usually out of office hours, don't have to commute anywhere, and they can actually join forces with aspiring solicitors. And that's where the magic happens and the mentoring happens and relationships are built. Now, whilst there's no guarantee or promise of any jobs through the clinic, through any of the firms that we work with, we do know that having these connections is so important for young entrants to the profession. Making these human connections with people, just because we're online doesn't mean there's any distance. And it allows people to generate connections, build their own personal network, because in law, more than ever, in a digital age, the personal network becomes more and more important. We have almost an overload and an overflow of information and endless amounts of people on social media. Then when that becomes too much, people always revert back to, well, who do I actually know? And the clinic provides this opportunity for aspiring lawyers to meet solicitors, learn from them, and also then build their connections. So we've tested the model now, and we've had over 20 people gain successfully their QWE or have their QWE reviewed and confirmed, and some are now actually on the roll as solicitors, which is fantastic news. Now that we've tested the model, we've seen that this can work. We understand the complexities involved and been able to simplify that. We'll be scaling this and expanding the service to look at areas where firms can get involved. So we've had a lot of interest from other law firms, and we've designed a model that's going to facilitate an environment for law firms to be able to get involved, and even potentially have law firms that get involved in legal aid work, get involved to be providing this real life work experience, providing that pro bono support to the public, and the guidance and mentorship and QWE that our SQE candidates need so much. So I think that covers it up. I think I stuck to time. I may not have. Apologize in advance, but I'll hand over.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Dino. So Shahedur, it would be fantastic if you could just give us just an overview of the process with the Access Law Clinic, how and like where QWE can be logged and recorded, and just generally talk through the steps of how somebody goes around getting their QWE confirmed at the clinic.
In terms of the QWE process, again, it's a lot more straightforward than you would think it was. And again, the SQE route and the QWE route and process has been really opened up a lot of opportunities, and I think it's really leveled the playing field. In terms of, and is it okay for me to address some of the questions that
Absolutely,
that you
yeah.
asked? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the first one about where is QWE logged and recorded, well, that can be done through the SRA website. And so that would generally require individuals to set up an account and then log it through that process, and they can log up to 2 years worth of experience. In terms of the limit of how far back you can go on your experience, the SRA hasn't actually quite well dictated that, interestingly. And of course, I've left it to solicitors kind of at their own discretion to help with verifying that.
Yeah.
Okay. Can QWE be signed off before completing the
Yeah.
SQE?
Is a common inquiry that we receive. A lot of people want to do the work experience in conjunction with their course, just so that it can obviously aid with their learning and also just minimize the time spent, because obviously a lot of people want to streamline their pathway and be able to qualify a lot quicker realistically. So it would be good if you could just elaborate on whether the QWE can be done either before, during, or after the SQE.
So it's really flexible in that, and it can be done. It can most certainly can be done before starting the SQE. And I can imagine, some real great benefits there. I mean, I was just speaking to a student, someone who's just finished university. They've just done their law degree. Okay, and they're looking to test the waters in terms of the legal experience, may have been applying for a role, doing some volunteering. So for that particular individual, they can obtain their work experience, whether it be through a paralegal role, a legal assistant role, voluntary or whatnot, and generate and accumulate that experience. Having done the 2 years, then of course they may then either accumulated more funds to then help fund the SQE or gain sponsorship. And I believe that there are various routes to gain that sponsorship. So it's a really good opportunity there in terms of getting that before starting the SQE. And of course, it means that if you've then logged it, then that's it. That's banked. Once you've got that experience, you've logged it, and you're able to kind of log it, and you've got your.
If I could jump in and just expand on that one, I know it's quite a long point, but it's actually a bit of an important one, because it shouldn't have really surprised me given the other qualifications that we did. But the very first inquiries we had for QWE when we set up the clinic were people who were contemplating doing the SQE, saying, look, I've been working as a paralegal for 3, 4, 5, 10 years. Can I have this reviewed and confirmed now? Because I want to know for sure before I spend a lot of time and effort and, of course, money on the SQE exams. And I don't know why it took me by surprise, but even for me, I had it in my mindset, the linear route of LLB, LPC, and training contract, whereas on the other qualifications that we run, so for example, licensed conveyancers and chartered legal executives, it's always been this way, that the work experience can run concurrently with your studies. And that, so it wasn't even a new thing to me, but even in my mindset, when I put my mindset on and the solicitor hat on, I thought, oh, wow, that's interesting. But certainly for our learner profile, it's not suitable for all learner profiles. So for example, perhaps full-time students who may be working part-time at the campus shop and so on, they might not have that chance. But typically the learner profile that we deal with at the Law Training Center, almost all of them are in legal work of some form. So why not have it reviewed and confirmed, or at least know, okay, I've got 18 months, 6 months, 12 months, and you've already halved that gamble. So it's a complete turnaround from the old days of, right, I've spent my 40, 50, 60, 70, sometimes £100,000 if you did the LLM as well. Now I need to get 2 years qualifying experience. It's really beginning with the end in mind, which is, I believe, a saying I need to attribute to Stephen R. Covey. But certainly, yeah, it's a good one. I'm glad to hear that you're sort of seeing that continue with our learners. as they're coming through and ask the question before they start.
Yeah, it's a complete reversal of the whole situation with LPC, where you do the LPC, then get the experience through the training contract. But here you can get the experience first, and then build that up, bank it, and then finish off with the SQE.
Yeah. I guess you also get to see if you really like working in law or not, right?
Yeah.
Wonderful. So just for clarity, in case there's like anybody from the LPC transition into the SQE, so can the QWE be done retrospectively then?
Absolutely, it can, and because QWE may range, maybe older, maybe a couple of years older. I think, as I mentioned previously, that there isn't a limit in terms of how far back that person can go, and I think that will come as a relief to many LPC students as well, who would have done the LPC, invested in that, and then maybe spent years and years and years trying to go for, trying to apply for a training contract. But it means that if they then go through SQE, they can then bank or count on some of the previous experience that they've already accumulated without having to go through that hurdle of a training contract or the PRT, period of recognized training.
Yeah. It's good that you touched on that there's not really a time limit for the work experience, but is there a limit of the number of workplaces and organizations that QWE can be completed at?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it's up to 4 places.
Brilliant. So if you could just touch on again just the best practices for ensuring a smooth QWE sign-off. What exactly do candidates need to present to you, or what experiences do they need to have in order to ensure that, they actually do get their work experience signed off successfully at the clinic?
Well, there are a couple of things, and I think what's really different about this process is the fact that the SRE aren't as prescriptive, and also, as Dino mentioned, for signing off that QWE, we're not assessing competence here. Okay, so to make the process a lot more straightforward, I would suggest that that learners, or those practicing, first of all, try and get a log of what they're doing, the type of work that they're doing. Okay, you don't have to do that, but I think it's good for your own development to make sure you do that. But also, it will then help the person, I ourselves, try to understand exactly what type of work that you did. So for example, if you work for a charity, you're helping to undertake its legal functions, and for example, it might be involved in assisting in some of the transactional work, or let's say preparing commercial agreements, whether it be a sale agreement, a supply agreement, or a licensing agreement, and you're instrumental in helping to prepare that, review that, negotiate its terms. Well, then make sure you note that down. Okay, make sure you write that down, what you did. Okay, then the second thing is, as well, is have a look at the competencies. Okay, so have a look at the statement of solicitor competence, which can be obtained through the SRA website. Okay, and the next bit is you need to try and connect the competencies with the work that you've actually done. So they come under 4 broad headings. However, underneath each broad heading, you've got a number of competencies as well. Okay, and so you've got ethics and professional judgment, of course, and underneath that, you've got lots of other subheadings which also count as competencies. So, for example, if you're preparing a commercial agreement, okay, that may fall under technical legal practice. So under that heading, you've got maybe some legal research, drafting documents. So of course, you've got 2 there. Great. Okay, so that's the second bit. Okay, is trying to make sure have the competencies to hand, have it in mind, and think about which ones you can tick off, but also ask yourself why, because you're going to have to, because it'd be helpful to know that. And then the third thing, of course, is then to check that this is okay with your supervisor. That well, first of all, you need to determine your supervisor, your work's being checked, and also your supervisor is okay to verify the work that you've been carrying out under these sections. And I think Dino's touched upon, yeah, of course, some people may have difficulty getting their supervisor, and of course, there are some barriers, but of course, this is where solicitors should be reminded of their kind of obligations under the SRA Code of Conduct, and the majority we find are more than happy to oblige. The importance of records as well is that because there isn't a limit on the how far back you can go. So if you're going back, let's say for example 6 years, if it's important to keep a record of that 6 years in case we need to go back to that supervisor in order to verify and confirm. And this is why records are really important.
Brilliant. So I was just wondering, I don't know if there's a question that you can answer, but if somebody, let's say their law firm is no longer existing right now, but they have done the work experience, what do you do in situations like that where you can't exactly like get in touch with the supervisor because like the law firm is no longer operating or it was overseas and it's not an easily accessible sort of company? Is there any sort of practice that you do there to confirm that work experience?
That's interesting because we need to be able to verify that somehow. Okay, it needs to be verified by somebody. Okay. The question is, how do you do that? Now, of course, possibly you can refer to documentary evidence, bearing in mind that, if it's somebody outside of the firm, that they're not breaching client confidentiality or data protection rules. Okay, and that there's consent to be able to see evidence of that work potentially. And that may possibly, it's not something that's come up that often, but if the firm does not exist and the solicitor, the supervising solicitor, although the solicitor may not, because the thing is, you've already qualified that and said, well, what if the solicitors no longer can be contacted? It's difficult. It's a difficult situation because you need to be able to verify, and ideally you need to do that. Maybe documentary evidence may satisfy that position, or we may need to refer to different experience where you can locate a supervising solicitor to be able to verify that. Dino, do you have anything to add to that?
It comes back to the importance of keeping records. So we've sort of seen this, particularly in some of our other qualifications, where it's not uncommon now. I mean, the oldest transcript I've seen is from the year I was born in 1979, when I've seen people go through. So there's a large chunk of people who've gone through a period. Typically, they got knocked back because of the lack of training contract, and their journey stopped there academically because they knew that the LPC was a non-viable option or too expensive and so on. But they continue with the work experience. And I think what's really been helpful then is, and I tell this to every person I see in law, keep all of your transcripts, not just the degree certificate, the actual transcript from university. If you don't have one, get it. You will be asked for these types of things in your life in the legal profession. And people who've come across that tend to keep good records. And what you touched upon is keeping those records, obviously redacting, getting permission, and essentially as long as it's not, the information has been anonymized, and then that can be produced. And typically people who in positions like that are on a stronger position to then be able to present something that is, you can credibly confirm. It's when nothing exists, and that, there's a lot of law firms of mergers and acquisitions, but the people tend to be around. But in the event of retiring and have gone off the grid or perhaps passed, then we have a bit more of a challenging problem. If it was maybe a bigger firm and there was another partner who was closely involved, contacting that partner might go some way to confirming a portion anyway. But what I've typically noticed is people who have records that go back a very long way tend to be able to top that up with more current experience as well. So I think if there are any people listening, you're thinking, gosh, I had all this experience, but I didn't keep records. I'm not going to be able to get that. Well, look back at what you're doing today. Check the SRA competencies, and you'll be really surprised. And I think a lot of us are very hard on considering our work. And when you work as a paralegal, you tend to undervalue the work that you do. And the SRA have really said it, paralegal work counts here. Look carefully and look at the words they use. They use words like identify, research, assist. They're not saying you need to be the person conducting the advocacy. They actually talk about reporting, and these are things that most people are doing in any paralegal capacity in a law firm at any given point in time. So, you know, if they're missing the records, look back at what they're currently doing, and anybody's listening now, get hold of your records as soon as you can. More is never a bad thing in what we do, because you can always sift through and sort that, right?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Was you going to add something, Shahedur?
I was, yeah. And I think that one thing I was going to add is sometimes, you know, some individuals may be in a placement in work and they're due to leave. And of course, you know, they want to try and bank that experience. And I think what would be helpful is, before, if they want to utilize that experience as part of their QWE, is while they're still there, to try and get that confirmed, you know, with the supervisor, and get them to get their agreement to do so. And I think that's really helpful, because the other issue also that needs to be confirmed as well is whether there were any issues that arose during the work experience that raises questions over their character and suitability. So that's really important. If you can get something in writing, a legitimate document that's signed by the solicitor, then great. But of course, you know, it's important, you know, to kind of tee that off, to iron that out before you leave that placement and go on to another, which is great. And that's part of the flexibility, because you can keep recording each aspect of experience as you go along until you've hit the 2-year mark.
That's a really good point, actually, Shahedur. And I think when people go to do that, often people are very shy to ask that, and they needn't be. And all they need to do is refer to the SRA guidelines. And what I'd suggest is actually printing out a copy of it and highlighting the part where it can reassure the solicitor that solicitor is not being asked to sign off competency. Because, you know, most solicitors that are out there, you know, 99% of them went under the training contract route. So all they remember is signing off of competency. And if they're then just reminded that, look, the SRA is saying you're not signing off competency, you're just reviewing, confirming I did this work and that there's no ethical issues with the work, I think they'll all be much more at ease and comfortable to then give that that review and confirm. Because certainly I've heard people going and asking a partner or someone to sign off their training contract, and then they'll be like, hang on a second, we don't have a training contract, what are we talking about? Because the word QWE and training contract is used interchangeably at the moment. And I've noticed even law firms are having SQE candidates, but they're calling the period of training a training contract, not QWE. So there's still, you know, we're in this transition phase. It's probably going to be another couple of years before I think everybody sort of forgets about training contract. And then, I mean, to be fair, you know, people still talk about the solicitors finals, right? So this was a long time before my time, and I hear that being mentioned today still. So legal years are slightly longer than human years, I think.
Brilliant, thank you. So I just wanted to touch on with Denisa now, because she's actually working as a law clinic associate with the Access Law Clinic. So if you could just start off by just sharing with our audience today just a brief overview of your background and why you decided to do the SQE and get work experience at the clinic.
Thank you, Rebecca. So I'm just going to start with my background. I'm actually a non-law graduate, so I don't have a degree in law, but I always wanted to pursue a law degree and qualify as a solicitor. But of course, I had many challenges to come with that. But I knew that I wanted to become a solicitor since I was a child. Why? Because I was very studious. I loved challenges. I was very disciplined. So let's say my mom would never check my homework. Oh, have you completed your homework? No, I haven't completed. Like, I have completed all my homework, and she would never check it because I wanted to achieve it. I wanted to be like, okay, so I really, really want to, you know, be disciplined and become the best student in the school. And then basically come across SQE because I came from a non-law background. The SQE kind of came to me, and I was thinking this is the best route that I can start. Because why I decided to do SQE is because I have a non-law background, and I was not eligible for student finance because I have a master's in international business law. So when I saw the SQE route, I was very content because it was a brilliant pathway for me personally.
Wonderful. So if you could just share with us just your life at the Access Law Clinic, like what does that look like and how does the role differ from like other legal experiences that you've obtained so far?
What I firstly do, I have a booklet and I write down the notes. And basically this booklet will ensure that I am focused for the day. So when I was entering the Law Access Clinic, I made sure that I have notes. And so I just open my laptop and start entering the case management systems. So basically, there was a very useful tool I have learned from Sven Glazer. She's one of the supervisors at the Law Access Clinic. And this opportunity has enabled me to get the other opportunity because with actually knowing what is the case management tool, I was able to get a paralegal position because of that. So basically, that have helped me to get an opportunity, right? And working in the Law Access Clinic as well has enabled me to see the cases and how to handle the cases. And I was mainly handling family cases, which I never come across. And when I was reading the cases, I was quite it was quite an impact on me because actually it's a real life experience. So I started conducting research on that, and based on my research, I have then wrote an advice. Of course, it was supervised, and that helped me to gain other skills, such as analytical skills, attention to detail, and also like showing empathy, because I felt that there's so many, let's say, solicitors or paralegals or working in the legal sector. It's not just conducting the work, but putting your heart into it and making sure that you serve your client at the best.
Brilliant. Good to hear that you've had a lot of transferable skills there. That is really, really good to see that the clinic is making such an impact like that. So in terms of it being an online clinic format, how was your experience with that?
I think that was like one of the best opportunities I have encountered because, as you mentioned, it's online, which indicates that, again, it opened many opportunities for me because now I could actually enter another online volunteer position. So actually, what's really good about it, Law Training Centers opened me the doors because they offered me the opportunity to work in the Law Access Clinic, but I can do basically 2 volunteer positions online, which means I can gain more experience.
Yeah, and
if I may jump in on a couple of points that you raised, Denisa, because they're quite topical, and I've been having a discussion today on LinkedIn about empathy, and I just finished an article that we're going to publish about QWE and SQE and why it's important. And can I just ask you something? You've mentioned non-law background, and I would like to encourage you to not say non-law, because non-law, I don't know, it just implies not. What is your background? What did you study?
Well, I studied Spanish and European studies.
Fantastic. So you Spanish and European studies. Now that's setting you up to be a bilingual European lawyer. You know, I would really steer clear, and I want everyone who's listening to this, because I've talked to journalism students, I've talked to scientists, I've talked to incredible people who studied really difficult subjects, really interesting subjects, and they're all saying non-law, and I'm like, oh, as if it's this. Look, law's tough. I won't say my law degree was tough. It's great to have, but you know, I don't think we have the right to say it is any better than any of the other things that people study. So, you know, and that's part of the non-law route. You see, I did it. I said it. It's to encourage diversity of professional background, because we have enough lawyers. We need people who specialize and understand. So you're really unique in the landscape of aspiring solicitors, that you know Spanish and you know European law, and that you're from a European country. In the current political climate that we're in, having those skills is even more important, because doing business cross-border from the UK is now more complex. So you're in a great position. But that leads me on to the point of, you mentioned real life cases, and you've studied things in the SQ, but can I ask, in terms of memory retention, the stuff that you research for a real life case, how does that compare to you remembering it versus when you're just studying it for the sake of an exam?
I think it's very different, of course. because for the exam, you actually want to pass. And then actually when you're working, conducting the work, it's when you actually put real knowledge in, but it's two different things. And this is the reason why when someone is conducting the SQ1 and someone who's actually taking the exam, I really advise people, don't rush it. Make sure you actually have knowledge and not just complete the exam because, oh yes, I have passed my SQ1. Because for you to pass the SQ1, you also have to do the SQ2. So you have to have a sufficient knowledge to actually gain the SQ2. So that's why it's really important to take your time and study thoroughly and ensure that you understand the concept of law.
No, that's great. And then you said something really important, learning empathy. It is, I think it's a skill that throws us when you've come out of law school, if you've not practiced or worked in law before, suddenly the cases, they're not black and white letters on a page, but there's a person in front of you telling you something that's really difficult, and learning how to deal with that. And you know, I mean, even to be fair, some of the cases that you read about is quite shocking, but nothing alters that experience and actually being in front of a person and then learning that empathy. But in a lot of ways, people open up to you and tell you things that are they wouldn't tell any other people, but they have to tell you because you need to represent them. And being able to be human in that circumstance goes a long way to helping people. Because the other thing we've got to remember is most law doesn't happen in the courtroom. You know, ideally, if we can mediate and negotiate a solution to a problem without getting to court, we've saved everybody a lot of time, a lot of heartache, and of course, a huge amount of legal fees. And that's where having empathy comes in. So I'm really glad to hear you've picked that up. I mean, family law is not an area I could honestly say I could cope with. I think I get too emotionally invested in it, but certainly having that experience, I'm glad to hear that's helping you along with the actual studies. And that's kind of the design of the whole point of it, is to allow you to be able to get some practice whilst you study and be better for it. It's a lot of hard work, of course, but you know, you're better for it.
Wonderful. So yeah, so just another reason why it was designed is so that pretty much everyone, wherever you are, has the opportunity to still be able to get either the experience signed off or actually do the experience at our clinic. So I just want to touch on with Kieran.
So I have a 2-year master's degree in law in Ireland, and then I came into UK law based on England and Wales. It is currently, based on my research, the best place to qualify if you're trying to gain in a legal qualification internationally. So from there, that's how I found, that's how I started studying for the England and Wales exam. I don't know if anyone else here has taken the SQE one recently, but it was booked up when I tried to get it. So the only places to go were, the only places I could get the second part of the SQE one were either Tokyo, New York. There might have been one in South Africa as well, but I looked at the map and I decided that I'd go with Tokyo. So so yeah, I've taken the first part I took in Prague, where I live. The second part I took in Tokyo. And then I just recently took the SQE2 in Vienna and in Birmingham, which I'm still waiting for the results. But anyway, to get into my experience with qualifying work experience, as I said, I live in Prague. And one of the main reasons that I'm pursuing the England Wales legal qualification is because you can actually do it. You can do it from abroad. So my first company that I worked with now, and I just finished working with them before I started studying for the SQE2, they were a trademark law company called Trauma TM. You can look them up if you want to. And what they do is they do international trademark registrations. And that organization was to help their clients draft trademark registrations that we then filed in multiple jurisdictions, not just England and Wales, but also the United States and the European Union. And so as part of that, as I was chatting with Dino a few days ago when we were kind of preparing for this call, he thought it was really interesting, and I think it is, that a lot of people wouldn't know that that is actually qualifying work experience, that working with you know, as you said to me before, it's like working with filing trademark registrations is about as far away as you can get from just having that typical 2-year training contract. But if you look at the regulations, this type of thing is legal work experience, and so we were able to confirm it. And again, another way that I can see that the Law Training Center is quite helpful, and it was quite helpful for me on my path, is while there was a solicitor kind of around the organization I was working with, and they had at one point told me they had a solicitor, but then that solicitor was no longer working with them when I completed my time. There was no one at the end of the day who was able to confirm my work experience, who was willing to actually sign off on it. I think part of that is because solicitors are often very scared. They think that that signing off on my work experience is more than just confirming that I actually did the work and that it is legal work. They were more, but anyway, as a result of this, it was very efficient for me, and I'm very happy with this service that I got with the Law Training Center, because it was a very simple process to just have it signed off. I filled out a bunch of paperwork, explained exactly what my work was. My supervisor was very happy to sign off on it, and I think that's because of the way that this organization does it. They have a very efficient way of reviewing the work experience. That's a very quick meeting, and also I did not need to, in contrast to some other confirmation organizations, I didn't need to share confidential material from my organization's clients, which I think it's just very rare that an organization is going to be willing to let you share screenshots of their confidential information. So it worked very well, and the process was very simple. I heard from my former supervisor after it was complete that it was basically just a short phone call to go over everything and then confirm it. So the process, I mean, for confirming QWE was pretty straightforward. I would say it was pretty much as easy as it could have been. And now, after I've confirmed my first year, I'm currently looking for the next year. I'm looking for what else to do next. There's a few different things, and yeah.
So Kieran, I just wanted to just walk back just a little bit about your experiences and all the QWE you've done to date. And I just mainly wanted to touch on, just for those who've experienced so many challenges in their journey, I just wanted to find out, just from your experience, if there's any sort of advice you can give for people who are struggling on just getting their foot in the door and discovering and finding out how to actually get qualifying work experience. If you can just give any sort of general sort of feedback from your journey and any advice on how they can overcome those sort of challenges.
So the first thing I would say to anyone who's struggling with it, I empathize with you. It is not the easiest thing to do in the world, depending on what connections you have. For me, I was in a position where it was much easier to get my first position, and now I'm looking for the second. It's taken me a little bit longer. I would say, well, to just give the explanation of how I found my first job, I did find it on LinkedIn. There was basically a position open in Prague that I sent a message, applied normally, and then they ended up hiring me, and then that lasted for a year. So it is possible to get a position through LinkedIn. When I've been looking for the second time around, I found that really connections are key. That you can apply to places, and if you keep applying, you probably will get something eventually. But I found that it's much more effective if you try to meet people, if you try to individually talk to people one-on-one. People are much more friendly, and they're much more willing to give you QW, or to kind of give you a position, if you meet them as a person instead of an application. So I think a common trap for people who are looking for this sort of experience is they think that they just need to keep sending application after application, where, in my opinion, it's more effective to meet person after person and then discuss your position and try and find something that works, because it is doable. It just takes I think networking is a good way to do it, or even just sending people messages on LinkedIn and then getting to know them and then seeing if it works out. That would be my advice.
Brilliant, thank you. I don't know if it was Denisa or Dina, but someone put their hand up, so I don't know if they wanted to add on to that. Was it Denisa?
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Kieran, because I've been for the same position, rejections, and I'm sure in the legal sector, it's one of the biggest challenges, being rejected, and we can become very upset with that, right? So I think what an important factor is, as Kieran mentioned, number one is networking, but number two, take your own opportunities. So all the experience you have learned, let's say as me as a social ambassador, or in the law clinic, I have learned that I can actually create my own opportunities. So I have created my own brand, and basically that helps me to kind of network with people, and then also it's an opportunity for me to grow as well. So make sure that you create your own opportunities and do not be afraid. You can do this.
Thank you, Denisa.
That's great to hear you both talk about LinkedIn. And I think because this was advertised on LinkedIn, hopefully everybody on listening has a LinkedIn profile. But if you don't get one, and then secondly, connect with people. I'll connect with you. I won't reject you. I promise. And connect with other lawyers. Lawyers use LinkedIn a lot. They're really happy to, in fact, more so than other platforms I've found. And the sooner you get connected, make yourself a commitment to connect with 5 lawyers a day, 10 lawyers a day. Don't go out there just selling straight away, but make connections, follow people, understand what's going on in the industry. You can, you don't have to go to absolutely every single face-to-face event because that's huge time and cost, but you can attend online events as well and build your network. And there's a ton of stuff on YouTube. In fact, there's probably an overload of stuff on YouTube about how to network using LinkedIn. Choose some of the stuff, the content that you like, that resonates with you, and then just actually do it. Stop thinking about it and then just get on with it. But yeah, I'm glad to hear you both referenced LinkedIn as tools to make that happen, because I've been around long enough to remember the day when LinkedIn was launched. And I was like, hang on, how's this thing going to work?
Cool. So I'm going to open the chat now for anyone who has any questions. Please feel free to drop them in. And we'll be happy to help you with those.
While we're waiting for the question, Kieran, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah.
Can I, if I remember correctly, the company you work for is based in Slovakia, and you're based in Prague.
Yeah.
And how the language, were there any issues language barrier-wise?
Most of the time, no. I don't know how much people in England and Wales appreciate that English is really an international language for a lot of companies. So working in Prague, I would say about 40% of the jobs are in English with English-speaking companies. And the company I worked for had several other people who didn't speak Czech, or Czech and Slovak are almost the same, who didn't speak Czech or Slovak. And but there were a few instances that, there was definitely, I remember one social event where I realized that none of the other international people were there. And then slowly the Slovak and the Czech came in, and then I was like, this doesn't really work for me. But you get used to it, if that's really the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah, I think that's great that you look in unusual places as well, because I think everybody's programmed to look at the typical places. It has to be at a law firm.
Sorry, Dino, we have a question. What about legal experience outside of the UK? Can that be used for QWE?
You're not limited to practicing in the within the jurisdiction of England and Wales. If you are conducting advocacy, if you're drafting contracts, if you're speaking to clients, if you're negotiating, and that's in obviously the language of China or Dubai or Amsterdam, then that can be accepted as qualifying work experience, which is really a bonus. Really just opens a field up.
That's really great to hear, actually, because one of our first SQE learners who did SQE 1 and 2 was actually dual qualified lawyer from Nigeria, and now is on the role of solicitors England and Wales. So QWE as a qualified lawyer in Nigeria counted straight away. So yeah, I think that's actually very similar to an inquiry we had last week. Rebecca, wasn't from another correctional services from a British overseas territory, similar situation. But the good thing about that is that it's closer related to England and Wales law, but the big thing is it doesn't actually have to be, because your competency will be tested in SQE 1 and 2. So yeah, international work experience, and you're bringing a different level of skills to the table for the legal community of England and Wales as well, which is great.
Yeah, I've done a review and confirm for experience in Dubai, China, Japan, Poland. So yeah, it's just amazing. It always amazes me the kind of breadth of work that people are involved in. But But hope that answers the question and gives some kind of good examples to anyone listening.
Yeah. So someone has asked, do we need 2 full years experience?
Yes. In short, yes. Yes, you do. But that can be obtained across different places. And if it helps sweeten that, especially if you have somebody who's maybe in a current position and they're not sure, they can go back, in the past. Of course, we need to try and be able to verify that and locate the supervisor and any documents to support that, and also to be able to satisfy the character and suitability issues.
Yep.
I think just to flesh out that point, the SRA don't specify hours. They do specify 2 years or equivalent
Yeah.
to, and really what they're doing is there's a bit of leeway, but to stretch out, say 1 day a week legal work experience over 2 years is obviously not going to cut it.
Yeah.
But what they're recognizing is the fact that a paralegal perhaps might do 80% of their work as legal work, and the other 20% is, say, administrative. So it's not unduly penalizing people who are paralegals, because then you ended up with the old conundrum of, well, I'm a paralegal, but I don't do any legal work. So there's a recognition by the SRA to be a bit broader definition.
It's good you touch on that, because they've just added they doing 5 days per week, whether that would count.
Well, I don't know which country they're in, but 5 days a week in most countries I know is, unless you're in retail, pretty much a full week.
Brilliant. We have another question. Can you use the 1,200 hours accumulated for a license conveyancing and TEP towards QWE?
Interesting one. So yes is the short answer. So the CLC specify hours, and they say 1,200 hours over a period of 2 years. So more than likely, you will be able to demonstrate that you meet the SRA requirement. And by the sounds of it, this is it's a licensed conveyancer qualification, but a probate practitioner qualification. So they'll be covering the areas of administration of estates and wills. That's more than likely to cover at least 2 or more of the competencies on the list. If they were to say fall short, so typically, the CLC use the word 1,200 hours over a period of 2 years, because they're allowing for employers to train people and perhaps have them recognized as a technician or a paralegal or other title, fee earner, etc., until they get licensed. But typically what we find, people in those roles pretty much have, the full work. So that's, again, a difference between regulators, where CLC specify 1,200 hours, but then they do say over a period of 2 years. So yes, more than likely. And if you were a few months short, just keep doing what you're doing, essentially. But for that person, I would say, please start keeping your records. If you've done your application for the CLC license already, your records should be in great order, because they're also very thorough. So just keep on doing what you did for them. Refer back to the SRA requirements, and you'll see the similarities that are there.
So someone's asking about networking. So what kind of events do we meet lawyers, and how do we apply for those networking events? Dino, I think you'd be amazing to answer this question.
First of all, I need to say,
you're the king of networking.
Gosh, it's incredible when I realize how people think how formal and stuffy we might be. We're not. You don't have to apply to networking events. You're welcome. You need to go to them. I don't know which part of the country the person is in, but if you're not, get on LinkedIn. There are events, June, July, but it's particularly June is an event of really fun networking events. So, for example, we're going to one in the Midlands, and we're going to be running around in T-shirts doing a crystal maze event. And this is going to be a bunch of property lawyers, by the way. So property lawyers are supposed to be very, very process-based and stiff and proper. And no, actually, we're going to be running around doing a physical challenge. There's another event I've been invited to in Clifton in Bristol, which is really a party on the river in Bristol. Solicitors do have fun, by the way. So no, you don't have to apply. If you have to apply to an event, I would say give them a tip. There's loads of law societies, almost all the law societies across the country. So there's one big law society, but then you'll have the Kent Law Society, you'll have the Kent Student Law Society, you'll have the London City Law Society, you'll have the Canterbury one. There's many smaller societies. So dip your toe into a smaller event, and almost all of them if they don't advertise it, it's only because they're not marketing organizations with a great website. You know, some of them have really outdated websites. All you need to do is ping an email and say, look, I'm a student, I'm a learner. Can I come to an event? So just drop the word apply and just ask the question if it isn't immediately clear, because a lot of these events, it's actually taken for granted that people think that they're open to anybody interested in law. And I think for some reason people think they have to apply. No, you don't.
Yeah, you don't.
Just ask the question.
Yeah.
The worst that can happen is they say no.
Yeah. I
Can I
mean,
also
linked.
add to
Yeah,
that?
I was just going to add to that.
Go on.
Yeah, sorry. So, yeah, like Dino said, LinkedIn is a fantastic place to discover these events. But something just as basic as Eventbrite, I don't know if anyone's heard of
Oh
that.
yeah, Eventbrite, you're right.
You can
yeah.
literally search up all the legal sort of events that are going on both online and in person. So that is a good website to check out, Eventbrite, to see all the latest going on there in the legal world. But yeah, sorry, Shahedur, you can add on. I just thought I'll throw that in there.
I think one other source also is worth considering is the junior lawyers division.
Yeah.
On the Law Society website, and each
Yeah.
section of the country will have its own divisional junior lawyers division, and so that's generally open to kind of solicitors that are up to 5 PQE, but also to junior lawyers. So if you're a student, you know, whether you're doing the LPC law degree or just looking to get into law, then of course that'd be really helpful for you to look at. So for example, in Bristol, we have the Bristol Junior Lawyers Division. In another neighbouring one is Cheltenham and Gloucester Junior Lawyers Division, and they always hold events, and numerous events. So it's just worth giving them a follow on LinkedIn or Instagram, and just keeping the notifications on for any events that are there. And of course, they're really friendly as well. So if you really want to meet people and say, oh, I'm interested in becoming a lawyer, or want to just get to know the local lawyers a bit more, then put yourself out there and say, I'd like to get into law, or I'd like to know a bit more. I'd like to come to one of your events, and they're more than happy to oblige. And also worth checking out the law societies as well for each area of the country, because sometimes they have their own events for new entrants or other people looking to get into the legal profession.
Look, and if you're shy, believe it or not, I still get shy walking into a room of lots of lawyers. It's still to this day, it just happens. Get there early and before the crowd has arrived, and introduce yourself to the people who are setting up and tell them, listen, I'm new to this networking event. And I guarantee you, the people who are there busy setting up, who are normally the organizers of the event, will be the friendliest people you've ever met, and will say, you know what, don't worry, stay with me tonight, and I'll introduce you to everybody. By the end of the night, you'll have spoken to 50 people, and you'd have wished you brought more business cards. And if that's still a bit too much for you, go and be an observer on the wall. 1 event, 2 events, 3 events, as many as it takes for you to just build your confidence. Don't go into an event thinking, I need to come out with a job offer. No, go in and be human, because really, that's what lawyers are. Believe it or not, they are human beings, and they really look forward to helping as well.
Yeah. So just another question. Can your supervisor qualify if they're a judge from a different jurisdiction? So your QWE needs to be signed off by a solicitor of England and Wales, or a compliance officer of England and Wales, of course. If you are struggling to find a solicitor from England and Wales to sign off your QWE, like we've mentioned throughout this webinar, we do have a QWE Review and Confirm services with our Access Law Clinic. So do get in touch with us after that, and we'll be able to review your QWE. Don't know if there's anything else anyone wants to add to that.
I would have thought any work under a judge would count towards being QWE.
Definitely would.
Yeah. Assistant role. Kind of envious, to be honest. I think for me, if I could have a choice where I would sort of work, I would love to be in the judiciary, not necessarily having the weight of making the decision, but researching and helping the judge apply the law. That's a really interesting area of law, and probably incredibly varied. And I think you'd have racked up to 2 years pretty easily. So yeah, you just need an England and Wales corp or solicitor to do that, which we can do for the law clinic. But that would be a really interesting one to
to look at, isn't it? Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
imagine a couple of other of the competencies that would tick off. For example, undertaking legal research, B2, drafting documents which are legally effective and accurately reflect. Well, it says client's instructions, but I think, hey, if it's it's a legal document and also involving drafting, and of course, planning and managing and progressing legal cases, or working with other people. There's so many, so it's definitely worth looking at the competencies.
Brilliant. And just one last question before we wrap it all up. Someone has wrote, it doesn't have to be in 2 years, does it? The 1,200 hours can be done in as little as 6 months. Does this make a difference? And what about work as trust and estate practitioner?
Right. So this is coming back to the CLC.
Yeah, the
requirement.
CLC.
Okay. So just for those listeners listening, what we're talking about is the CLC, the Council for Licensed Conveyancers, who have a different qualifying work experience requirement, and they measure it in hours. Now, the CLC on the website used to simply specify 1,200 hours. In the latest update to their website, they've specified 1,200 hours over a period of 2 years. This is something you just need to clarify with the CLC when making your application. So if this person's already had their work experience confirmed and have a license from the CLC, then they've obviously had no issue with that. So that's fine. I think when it comes to the hours bit, the SRA is looking for 2 years. Now, trusts and estates planning. Now, we know that trusts and estates planning is not a regulated area of law, and probate's the only part that's regulated for authorized persons. However, trusts and estates planning certainly ticks off a lot of the requirements. If we look at Section A, we talk about ethics, professionalism, and judgment. So there's a lot of that application in trusts and estates planning. Then we look at technical legal practice. So, for example, obtaining relevant information through effective use of questioning and active listening. Trusts and estates planning covers a lot of that. Undertake legal research. Well, trusts and estates are famous for the amount of research that you have to do. So well done to this person. I know most law graduates don't look back fondly at their trust unit. Then there's develop, advise, and on relevant options, strategies, and solutions. Certainly, estate planning, it's a lot of developing and advising relevant options. It's a complex area and application of law as well as tax law as well. There's negotiate solutions to client issues. So if they were dealing with any potentially contentious probate matters, for example, falls under that remit. Then there's C, you've got working with other people, which no doubt the person's been working as a licensed probate practitioner or a trust and estate planner. They're going to more than likely meet that requirement. We've got D, managing themselves in their own work. And that's quite self-explanatory, but a big part of it. So I would suggest to that person, please do look through the SRA website. So if you just Google on the SRA QWE requirements, it's all laid out there. But yeah, I wouldn't expect much difficulty meeting those requirements.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Dino. Perfect. Super. Thank you so much for everyone for attending today's webinar. We really appreciate everyone that's participated today. If we weren't able to get to your questions, please do not hesitate to contact us. We'll be more than happy to answer any sort of inquiries that you have. Feel free to just pop us an email at info@ltckent.com, and we'll surely get back to you and provide you with further assistance and support with that. But again, thank you everyone for attending the webinar. Thank you so much to our guest speakers today. It's been very insightful having you all on, and yep, thank you.